It's like buses. You wait and you wait for an electric car from Volkswagen, and then suddenly they all come along at once. Now, VW used the name ID for their electric range, and well, this is the ID.3. It was the first electric car that kicked off the Volkswagen electrified range way back in 2020.
But before I explain why the Volkswagen Electric Star should be on your used car shortlist, then please do take a second to subscribe to our channel by clicking the button. That one, just up there.
Now, they say that a week is a very long time in politics. Well, when it comes to electric cars, it is even longer, because this may not have been around for very long, but it already has an impressive used market. And that's because Volkswagen actually bought lots of cars into the UK when it was first launched. A combination of cars used for dealer demonstrators, then also used for management cars, which are basically company cars given to employees for about 6 months. Plus, there were lots of pre-registered cars that dealers actually sell to themselves to balance the books and then qualify for bonuses.
Choose one of these rather than going new and you could save yourself thousands. We found more than 300 used ID.3s listed online after a quick search. Plus, there are a load more within Volkswagen's own retailer network. Remember, when you're looking for a used car, dealers only put a handful of cars onto paid-for sites. So if you're prepared to do some legwork, you can find some hidden gems.
So what's the ID.3 actually like? What do you need to be aware of? Well, let's start with the good stuff. How it drives. It's so simple. I love it. You jump in the car. First of all, appreciate your beautiful surroundings. I do love the ID.3 interior. But when you're driving, it is as simple. You click this little control around into drive, and that's it. You are good to go. As ever, yes, you have your accelerator and your brake pedal, but that is it. And between us, that is what I love about electric cars. They are so simple to drive. And we all need a bit of simplicity in our lives, don't we? Right, speaking of which, let's head to the road.
And once you're on the move, it just gets even better. The acceleration is so smooth, there's no gearbox doing a million things under the bonnet, and no clutch to pump in stop-start traffic. It's honestly lovely.
Now, the other thing that I love about the ID.3 is the comfort. Now, we all know electric cars are a bit heavier than petrol and diesel counterparts, but unlike some of the earlier cars, you actually really can't tell when you're driving this. The ride quality is amazing. It soaks up the bumps really well. I'm driving around country roads. It's smooth, it's comfortable. It's also got this lovely light-filled interior. It's great. I love it. It's sort of a really well thought through space, and I can really appreciate it from this comfortable driving position. Now, if you were considering the ID.3 as a family car, I've got a bit of good news, because the interior is big. Genuinely, it is a really decent size, and that is because this ID.3 has been designed as an electric car. It wasn't designed as something else and then turned into an electric car. Now, this has been designed with the battery at its core. So what does that mean? Well, basically, it means you've got lovely big footwells at the front that push into the space where you would normally have the engine. Therefore, the seats are a bit further forward, and that means I've got loads of space in the back. That's a lot of space. This seat is where I was driving earlier, and yeah, well, you can see lots of space. So that is not going to happen, hopefully. And then, of course, this bit, you've got extra space for that poor third child who can sit here. You have a nice flat floor because, of course, you do not have to have the tunnel in the way for that dirty exhaust pipe that, of course, the ID.3 does not need. Now, inside, you get not one but 2 screens. Woohoo! Although this one's a bit small, isn't it, compared to some other cars on the road, but it's fine. It serves the purpose. It tells you what you need to know. Now, almost everything within the car is actually controlled by this screen here. It's relatively straightforward to use. My personal preference is that I do tend to quite like some physical buttons, but that's just a personal preference of mine. And the other thing that you can use is the ID has its own equivalent of Alexa or Siri. Let's put this to the test. Please work. Hello, ID. Can you tell me a joke, ID?
Oh, my developers didn't teach me that, but I'll give it a go anyway. I couldn't work out how to fasten my seatbelt. Then it clicked.
I mean, that's worse than Wookiees. Now, in terms of battery choices, the ID.3 launched last year with just one option. It was the 58 kilowatt hour pack. But since then, Volkswagen has added two more. There's the smaller 45 kilowatt hour and then the bigger 77 kilowatt hour. Now, the tricky thing is actually spotting which one is which in the used market. It's not actually that simple because the battery size isn't mentioned anywhere in the name of the car. Thanks, Volkswagen, for that one. Now, if you do want the biggest battery, you can look for the Tour model because that's the only one that actually gets it. And if you want the smaller 45 kilowatt hour pack, well, look for a City or a Style model.
And just when you thought the ID.3 range couldn't get any more confusing, the mid-size 58 kilowatt hour battery, like the one fitted to this car, comes with two different motor power outputs, 145 PS and 204 PS. Now, in terms of charging, all ID.3s can rapid charge at up to 100 kilowatts, with the biggest 77 kilowatt hour battery able to charge at 125 kilowatts. Now, that is good news and means that on a 150 kilowatt charger, all ID.3 models can charge to 80% in around half an hour. Now, AC charging is pretty standard at up to 11 kilowatts, but if you're at home and have a standard connection, you'll be able to charge at 7 kilowatts.
Now on to the not so good bits. Be warned, there are a couple to look out for, but I think it's important to be open and honest with you. And I don't think I'm breaking any confidences when I say that when the ID.3 arrived last year, well, it actually wasn't quite ready. It arrived a bit too early on the scene. Now, don't worry, I'm not talking about cars with 3 wheels or missing doors or anything like that. But the problem was that the software had a few technical glitches. And actually, Volkswagen did admit that the rollout of the ID.3 was pretty fraught. And because the whole car is built on a completely new software system, it was actually still being fixed and debugged as the very first cars were being delivered. Now, as a consequence, there are a few features missing on the very early cars. Things like Apple CarPlay, the heads-up display, and the ability to receive software updates remotely, which is obviously really useful. So that's just something to be aware of.
Now, the good news is that Volkswagen has fixed the problem, hooray, with a series of software updates. The biggest was rolled out in January and was effectively a completely rewritten version of the original operating system. Since then, almost all the bugs and problems experienced by early buyers have been fixed.
Now, we would expect that every ID.3 in the Volkswagen network is running the latest software. However, if you're buying privately or from a non-franchised dealer, then it is worth double checking. And this is how you do it. Go into settings from the main menu, which is up here. Then scroll down to system information. Click on there and you can see it says software 0792, and that is the latest software that you want to make sure your ID.3 has.
Also, some of the cars which were registered in a hurry by dealers in the first quarter of 2020 have slightly odd specifications. The first edition, like this car, is pretty good, but most of the other models we found for sale are either black or white and have steel wheels with hubcaps. They kind of look like the sort of hire car you get when you go on holiday to Spain, even though they're actually quite high spec.
Now, another thing to look out for is 12-volt battery failures. Now, despite the fact that this ID.3 is actually running a main battery that could probably power your house for at least a week, there is a critical element, this smaller 12-volt battery hidden in here. And that does relatively important things like switch on your radio and lights when the car's not running, but it also is the gateway for a smooth running of an electric vehicle, and here's why.
The 12-volt battery also controls what's called a relay, which switches the main battery on and off. Now, for a number of reasons, 12-volt batteries on electric cars are prone to failure. In the case of the ID.3, some cars had an electrical fault that allowed the battery to drain even when the car was switched off. Now, Volkswagen have fixed this in the latest update, so hopefully that won't be an issue anymore.
Now, the other issue, well, it's not so much of an issue, it's just something that you need to be aware of, particularly if you are new to buying electric cars, is the range. Now, the official range of the 58 kilowatt hour battery is 261 miles. Now, that's official, okay? So remember, in the real world, that number is going to be lower. So we're talking more like 200 miles. So check the calculations, make sure, is 200 miles going to be enough for you? If it's not, then you can go for the bigger battery, the 77 kilowatt hour battery, and that will give you in the real world about 250 mile range. If that is plenty, you don't need anywhere near that much, go for the 45 kilowatt hour battery, and that will give you more like 170 miles. So there we go, a guide to buying a used ID.3. I've got to say, I do love this car. It's such a joy to drive. I think it's a brilliant all-rounder. I'm still trying to find out what the downfall is of this car. Maybe let me know in the comments below, but it is a great compact family car. I do absolutely love it. So I think if it is on your shortlist of used cars, then you're definitely making a good choice here. We have done a more in-depth review of this car. Ginny's done it on the website, so we will put a link to that review in the description if you haven't seen it already. But overall, I think there were a few glitches with the car when it first came to market, but Volkswagen have definitely ironed those issues out. The good news is there are plenty of these available on the second-hand car market, so do make the most of that. And in the meantime, remember to subscribe and click that little notifications button, and then you get updated of all our new car reviews and used car reviews. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck making that decision.